Will Cloud become a reliable narrator? Will Zack meet up with our party? And what does Sephiroth mean when he tells Cloud 7 seconds until the end? I asked you guys your thoughts and opinions and theories on the Final Fantasy VII franchise, and you guys provided some really cool ideas in return, so we're going to take a look at those in today's video. So if any of that sounds cool to you, feel free to click the like button, and if you're new here and you'd like to stick around and help support the channel, you can subscribe, and as always, leave your thoughts in the comments down below. So every once in a while, I like to go to the community tab on my channel and just pose a question to you guys and try to get your thoughts and opinions on Final Fantasy VII. And we got a lot more than I was expecting this time around. I think there was around 50. I'm used to getting maybe like 18 to 30 questions on these threads. So there was a lot more than I was expecting. So unfortunately, I can't include every question because when I do these community things, sometimes there is a lot of overlap, and to kind of reduce redundancy, I just try to distill them down to like one specific comment that kind of covers everyone's question. So if you don't make it into the video, my apologies. That's just kind of how this stuff goes. But the first theory we're going to talk about comes to us from user Kevin Dye with a very interesting avatar. And this is a take on the ending of Rebirth in regards to that Jenova manipulation, Cloud being an unreliable narrator. And it's an interesting take that I don't think I've heard someone bring up before, and it really took me for a loop. So they go on to say, everyone has this all wrong. At the end of the game, Cloud is the only reliable narrator. He is the only one, other than Aerith, who sees the rift in the sky, which we now know has been there all along. It's the perfect plot twist to pull on OG fans because they think they know better than everyone else who Cloud Strife is. You want to talk about meta? That's meta. Which is a super interesting take. And of course, you know, as a fan, I don't consider myself an authority on Final Fantasy or Final Fantasy VII. There's a lot I don't know, there's a lot that I misremember or get wrong, but it's fun to make these videos and theory craft just because it's fun, and it leads to really cool discussions like this. As far as that theory goes, and Cloud being the unreliable narrator, we know that in the original FF7, that's who Cloud is. It's not until the end of the game, pretty much, that we discover who Cloud truly is, and that a lot of what he's experienced and told the party isn't necessarily true. Everything's all kind of jumbled up. And going into the remake trilogy, that is still true. Cloud is still an unreliable narrator. But what's really interesting about how they're handling it in the remake trilogy is Cloud is starting to remember things much sooner than he did in the original game. For example, Zack. When they get back to Nibelheim, Cloud now remembers who Zack is. The details of the relationship are still kind of fuzzy. He thinks that he and Zack were both soldier first class and that Zack died at Nibelheim, which isn't true, but what's important is that he's now remembering things much sooner than he did in the original. And as the player, we know Cloud is an unreliable narrator. But the party is also questioning this too, specifically Tifa and Barrett. Tifa again confides in Aerith. What's going on with Cloud? He's remembering things that he shouldn't remember. Cloud even confides in Tifa, telling her, I feel like there's multiple people inside of me. And even Barrett at the end of Rebirth tells Cloud, like, look man, we're counting on you. Can we trust you? Like, he knows Cloud is not well. So there's already that distrust there that we've come to expect from the party. Now, flash to the end of Rebirth and Aerith has died. But for Cloud, he's still seeing a version of Aerith show up. And again, based on what I believe and some of the theories that have been out there, a lot of us feel like this is not Aerith. This is either an illusion created by Sephiroth and Jenova, or it's Jenova herself taking the form of Aerith to try and manipulate Cloud and make him even more Delulu, essentially, and cause even more of a rift between him and the party. And based on some of the events that happened towards the end of Rebirth, Cloud now has the ability to see that rift in the sky, which no one else can see. And this is where things get really interesting because, again, Cloud being the unreliable narrator, he's now seeing Aerith. He might actually be seeing the real Aerith on some situations. And now that he has access to that rift, he might be privy to information that is true, that's factual, and he might try to relay that to the party. And if he's telling the party, like, yeah, I just had a conversation with Aerith, or I just met Biggs over there, or I just saw this, this, and this, and they already don't trust him, they're officially going to be like, yeah, Cloud, you've lost it. You've officially launched yourself into space. What the heck is going on? And that's where the meta aspect really kicks in, because us, as the player, we're absorbing the story through Cloud's eyes. That's how we're getting this information. So for us, we might be like, well, wait guys, like the stuff Cloud is seeing might actually be real. He might actually be a reliable narrator in some scenarios. But then that meta layer gets stacked on top of it, and you really think about Jenova and Sephiroth manipulating not just Cloud, but now the player, and our expectations of what we expect from the story of who Cloud is. When is he reliable? When is he unreliable? So if they do take that angle where a lot of the stuff that Cloud is seeing is actually factual and no one believes him, and even as the player, we're starting to question Cloud, like, wait, are we getting this wrong? So like there's a lot to kind of process within that theory, but I thought it was just super interesting, and it's a really interesting new meta take on, is Cloud actually reliable or not? Because Sephiroth and Jenova are clearly manipulating Cloud, but if you reach a little bit further, they're also manipulating us by proxy, because we're the player seeing everything through Cloud's eyes. It's super cool, very exciting, and the thing that's really awesome is we don't know what the heck is going on. We won't get answers until part 3, but that's why I love it. There's just so much to discuss, and there's so many different directions that you could go with something like this, and I think it's super cool. Our next thought comes from the Musical Christian, where they talk about having playable soundtracks in Remake Part 3 from the original FF7, and how you would find them in corresponding areas of where they should be. And they give the example Buried in the Snow would be found up north near Icicle Inn, Northern Crater. And then they also have a really cool description here by saying, here's what makes this idea creative. What if you had a portable CD player that you could toggle on and off? When turned on, it would switch Part 3 soundtrack to the original OST. However, the CD player would crackle and revert to Remake's OST when you enter a location where you haven't yet collected the corresponding CD. That would encourage you to collect CDs for each location. This is cool, and it reminds me so much of Final Fantasy 15, where you're just driving around the map, you stop at a rest stop or a gas station, and you buy a soundtrack from the previous Final Fantasy games, and then you can listen to them in the regalia. And if I'm not mistaken, there was a portable MP3 player that you could use in 15 to listen to that music when you were on the run. Something similar in 7 Remake Part 3 would be cool. It'd be a really great way to celebrate the music in this franchise, of not just having a portable jukebox for the new music, but also the OG music, and trying to find a way to customize the music to play properly for each corresponding area. And then that little crackle of going back to the new music, if you don't have that, I think is a really cool idea, and that would be really fun, and it's a super cool callback to Final Fantasy 15. Up next, this is from Brittany Knuckles 1427, and this one is echoing that Jenova theory that a lot of us have been following, of where that Aerith we see at the end of the game in the Forgotten Capital and in parts of the open field. I do want to clarify this because there was some confusion when people were talking about this, of like, well, you know, at the very end of that scene and the end of the game when the tiny Bronco's taking off, why would Jenova stand there and say goodbye to the party in a way that feels very sincere? Here's what I think is happening. Like this theory says, and like I believe, I again think that Aerith we're seeing at the end of the game is full-on Jenova, either an illusion or Jenova straight up taking the form of Aerith to manipulate Cloud. But I do think there might be some instances where Cloud is speaking to the real Aerith, and I think that final shot of the game where the tiny Bronco is taking off and Aerith is saying goodbye, that could potentially be the real Aerith. She's just not currently aware of what Sephiroth and Jenova are potentially doing to manipulate Cloud, taking the form of her body. But like Brittany mentions, I do think we're going to get that very cathartic moment in part 3 where Cloud and Aerith just have that heart-to-heart, and she's able to reassure him like, look, none of this is your fault. You need to let go of that guilty conscience and move forward. And Cloud can hopefully accept that he did everything that he could, but sometimes there are things out of your control and death happens, which we will reference again a little bit later. Our next one comes from Reg3759 or Reg3759, depending on your level of literacy, and they bring up the weapons that we see in the live stream and how it kind of looks like they might be protecting a specific point. They go on to say, during the last scenes of the game, there is one dedicated to the weapons. I think that little is said about this scene, mainly because after seeing it, the first idea that comes to mind is that they are in the live stream and they are fighting against the Black Whispers. But seeing the scene in more detail, you can see that they are defending exactly a specific point. If you look in the background, you can see the structures of Nibelheim. Then if you look a little more at the weapons, they seem to make an attack and then leave. It's not as if they were fighting continuously or as if they made an attack and failed. They then go on to say how those weapons may have taken the memories of that Nibelheim area to protect them from Sephiroth, because Sephiroth might have sealed off that specific spot in the live stream with those black whispers. Again, Sephiroth does not want Cloud to become whole. He needs him as that puppet, not only for the black materia, but for something potentially more nefarious. And this is actually super cool. Again, Nibelheim in the live stream is going to be so vital for Cloud to get his memories back. Tifa's already been there, so she's going to have some sort of experience to try and help him, but it would make sense that those weapons, who might actually be working with Aerith, again, from what we know of Final Fantasy lore, Aerith and Sephiroth are both in the live stream at the same time, battling each other. So Aerith, again, if she knows the entire outcome of the OG FF7, she knows that at some point Cloud and Tifa are gonna have to get those memories to fix Cloud. And if Sephiroth knows that as well, he's gonna take every precaution he can to prevent anyone from getting into that space. So if those weapons are potentially working with Aerith, which I think they are because they did in fact save Tifa when she fell into the live stream, Sephiroth then attacked them, and these weapons are pretty strong. This is a character who is super strong like Sephiroth, who even struggled to hurt one of these weapons. So he's in for the fight of his life here, but that's a really cool thought, something I definitely didn't catch. But those weapons probably may have taken some of those memories, or are at least trying to protect the area, so that way when Cloud and Tifa need to be there, they can be there. Up next, we have Eddie5097, who says, Fusion Sword from Advent Children is Knights of the Round made into a sword, like Ragnarok in FF6. That would be a really interesting direction to take with the Knights of the Round. I don't know if they would become a weapon, but I could totally see like the Knights rewarding Cloud with a new weapon for having bested all of them, and that would be the Fusion Sword. And again, that would be a really cool way to get the Knights, where I think we talked about in the past of how you could make them proto-relic missions, but you would want to change up the structure of those missions. And I think a really awesome game to look at for how to follow that blueprint is God of War Ragnarok. Now, for those of you who have played Ragnarok, or maybe you haven't, there are these enemies in the game called Berserkers. They are the toughest, most knockdown, drag out fights in Ragnarok. They will have you pulling your hair, yelling in frustration, shouting at the TV, "Oh, come on, game, that's cheap. I didn't get hit." But the fights themselves are super fun. And I believe there's 12 Berserkers scattered throughout all of the different realms. And as Kratos, you and Atreus have to go find their headstones, activate the headstone, and then you fight the Berserkers, and you get some really cool armor and equipment. And I think you could take that same tactic with 7 Remake Part 3, where all of the knights are scattered throughout the different regions. You come across a specific area that has 1, maybe 2 knights, you battle the knight, and then they decide to join you. And you could even tie that into the story, because we do know that the Cetra went to war with Jenova. Jenova took on the form of a Cetra until she was found out. The knights might have even been the ones responsible, if I remember correctly, to seal away Jenova. But by sealing her away, they also kind of sacrificed themselves. So if they catch wind that, hey, there's a group of people that are looking to stop Jenova, they might want in on that. But in order to officially have you join them, they want you to prove yourself. Like, hey, we want to help you fight Jenova too, but you're going to have to beat us so we can deem you worthy. I think that would be really cool. Go around the world, you collect all of the different knights, or maybe pieces of the Knights of the Round materia to make it whole. I think that'd be sick. Up next, we have Leland Wells, or Leyland Wells, and they go on to say, I think the last battle will be Omni Cloud fighting Sephiroth with the spirits of Zack and Aerith by his side. A party group we've never seen together with unique dialogue and amazing team attacks. This honestly should happen. I'm pretty sure Aerith will return in part 3 in some capacity. She's such a fun character to use, and she's so overpowered. We still haven't even seen her final limit break, so I'm assuming she's going to come back in some form. Same with Zack. They put a lot of work into the mechanics of Zack just to have him in Rebirth. There's no way he's not going to be playable or play a bigger role in part 3, but the idea of Cloud teaming up with the two of them to fight Sephiroth is pretty epic. So if you're doing some sort of maybe battle within the live stream, or maybe within Cloud's mind to try and fight back Sephiroth, and Aerith and Zack can team up to help them out, the synergy abilities alone, especially if they go with the Tritex and have 3 characters team up, could be super awesome. Up next, we have Ecto Gamut, who talks about the life stream being responsible not only for life, but death itself. So you kind of have to have the life stream in order to have that cycle of life. They then go on to say that Cloud and Sephiroth might potentially destroy the life stream with their powers combined, Captain Planet, which would then make everyone immortal, but that would cause a lot of issues, especially if you want to push the environmental angle in that message within 7, which is a pretty big part of 7. It's, you know, saving the planet. And they both have that same motivation of not wanting to lose people. And if Cloud again is still struggling with the loss of Aerith, and he cannot accept that Aerith is gone, and again, Sephiroth and Jenova are playing on that insecurity of having this image of Jenova as Aerith pop up to really manipulate and mess with Cloud's head. That could make Cloud do some really awful things. And one of the biggest themes of FF7 is life and death, loss essentially. Those are two sides of the same coin, which the game really hammers home. And I've mentioned this in previous videos, but for Cloud, if he cannot accept that death is just a thing that happens, then he's really no different than Sephiroth. He has to accept that Aerith is gone, Zack is gone, his mom is gone, and there wasn't anything that he could do. That's just the natural part of life. And for a character like Sephiroth, we're really learning a lot about him through Ever Crisis, and one of the things that they're really sticking on is that young Sephiroth really wanted to save people, and in most situations, he couldn't. He either lost them because they died, he either had to kill them himself because that's what that person wanted, or his actions push people away. And maybe Sephiroth wants a world where no one has to die. He would still be a tyrannical ruler, but he doesn't want anyone to lose their life anymore. And maybe himself, he realizes that in every one of these worlds, the outcome is the same. He gets his butt kicked. Maybe he doesn't want that anymore. So he's trying to figure out a way where he can too be immortal and rule as a god, essentially. So that might be a part of Remake Part 3, where maybe Cloud just screws up so royally and it's not just about the black materia, but they mess with the Lifestream. That's an interesting take. Up next, we have Mercy Austin 4022 that says, you think that Zack will cross paths with Cloud and co during the raid on Midgar when you fight Hojo. I feel like that would be cool to have both Zack and Cloud be headed towards the same goal, stopping Hojo. Then that's where their worlds reunite. There's a lot of possibilities there. At the end of Rebirth, we see Zack and he's in the Sector 5 church in the slums. We don't know what world he's in exactly, but it's very likely that the world he's in is the world that the main party is in. And maybe his goal is to venture out of Midgar to try and catch up to Cloud and the party, or maybe he stays behind in Midgar to help things out. And eventually that would lead him to cross paths with Cloud and the party. There's so many different directions you can go, but what they do with Zack, I'm really excited to see. And I just really do want that moment where, we did have Cloud and Zack team up in Rebirth, but it was in like the Edge of Creation, mind prison-y place where they were fighting Sephiroth. But to see them actually see each other again in the real world to help each other out, I think will happen. It's just, I don't know where. Up next, we have Autumn Plays, always a fun name to say. Good to see you back. They go on to say, you know how we played with Zack during those short cutscenes? Well, I think that is how it will be for Aerith in Part 3. Short little playable scenes to see how she's trying to figure out how to summon Holy and help from the Lifestream. Maybe her and Zack team up in the Lifestream to assist the party. They can't not have her in Part 3 at all, so that might be a fun way to bring her back. Yeah, Aerith will 100% be back. Whether she teams up with Cloud and Zack, we don't know, but again, we know her role within the Lifestream is incredibly important. And she might be, trying her best to fight off Sephiroth. Again, they're waging war with each other within the Lifestream, and I don't know if it was clarified in Rebirth, but I was under the impression that maybe those white whispers are Aerith's, or are at least working with Aerith to some degree. So Aerith in the Lifestream maybe revisiting certain worlds, battling against Sephiroth and the enemies that he throws at her, I think would be really fun. I just want to play as Aerith again. She's so OP in Rebirth. Next, we have Bylef9565 that says, hopefully there is a side quest at Gongaga with Cissnei when Cloud is back in the party and completed the side quest. Cissnei tells Cloud that she knows about him with Zack, and Cloud regretfully tells her that Zack is not coming back. That, I think, will probably happen. They introduced Cissnei in Rebirth, and I don't think it's just to have her be in Gongaga and, reference Zack and Crisis Core. I think you still need to tie up that story end with her character in particular. It's not just her being in Gongaga, protecting the village. She's still waiting for Zack. She doesn't really know what happened to him. So if Cloud can regain his proper memories after that Lifestream moment, they head back to Gongaga and they, open up to each other. And he tells Cissnei, like, look, Zack died. But again, the wrinkle in there is Zack really going to stay dead? He might be in our world. He might reunite with Cissnei. They might have a nice moment together, but then inevitably he has to leave because he might have to die. It's again, there's a lot they could do there. This next one is from Cynical Idealist 11, who is taking the angle that the Aerith that we're seeing at the end of Rebirth is actually the real Aerith, and she's essentially, trying to take care of Cloud. She's coddling him because she knows how fragile his mental state is, and she knows that if it collapses, Sephiroth is now 10 steps ahead of her and everyone else in the party. So it's almost like Aerith is a barrier for Cloud at this point in time, trying to shield him from that mental collapse where Sephiroth wants Cloud to be. And in time, maybe she can work out a way to, again, help Cloud work through that grief and just accept. And acceptance essentially is what it is. That's another interesting angle to take. Up next, we have Eddie5097, who says, Minerva, from Crisis Core, had an owl in the real-life legend. Throughout Rebirth, we are guided by an owl to beautiful crystal sanctuaries. We are being helped and guided by Minerva in Rebirth. Maybe Minerva is coming in Part 3. Minerva is super interesting because she was a big-ass boss in Crisis Core. She also has ties to Genesis. If I remember correctly, she, I think, purifies Genesis, right? When he falls into the Lifestream, there's that big cutscene. It's been so long. But the connection with the owls is super cool. Again, the way that the owls function in Rebirth is a lot like Ghost of Tsushima, where you find foxes and birds that lead you to cool areas. So it could just simply be an inspired gameplay mechanic. But again, these devs really love to tie story to gameplay. And if an owl is connected to Minerva and Minerva's within the planet, I wouldn't be surprised if she makes an appearance when the weapons do. Whether she's on our side or not, I don't know. But I feel like Minerva in some degree has to be mentioned in Part 3, whether she's a boss battle or tied to the story. And the last one we will end on, this one is again from Leyland Wells. I try to usually only put one from each person, but this is something that created a big conversation in the comment section, so I decided to include that as well. And they go, what do you think 7 seconds till the end means? And what will Cloud do with it? I wish I had an answer. The ending to 7 Remake with Cloud and Sephiroth on the edge of creation is living in my head rent-free. And we don't really know anything about that scenario, what that conversation means, what even is the Edge of Creation. Now, we are learning more about Sephiroth and the Edge of Creation through something like Ever Crisis, where we see that Sephiroth is there reflecting on his life. He's reliving the memories of when he was young Sephiroth, all the way up to when he became that war hero in Wutai. So clearly, Sephiroth is having a moment of reflection. Now, is the Sephiroth we see on the Edge of Creation a good guy? Is he a bad guy with, potentially tweener, so to speak, motivations? Maybe he does want to do something good, but it's going to take some really bad actions to pull it off. Or maybe the end for him is just making sure that he's taken care of and he can, be a ruler of a planet. Or perhaps he's on the edge of creation because he needs Cloud's help to create a new world where, again, throwing back to some of those other questions, nobody has to die. He and Cloud are essentially in charge of this new world. Everyone is immortal. You never have to lose anyone ever again. In Cloud, you don't have to kick my ass every single time we fight. And it's just that entire interaction where Sephiroth doesn't feel like a bad guy in that moment. He's offering his hand to Cloud, asking for help. And Cloud's like, nah, fool, I ain't gonna join you, I'm gonna fight you. And Sephiroth just matches Cloud blow for blow. He knows seemingly what's coming, and Sephiroth beats him without breaking a sweat. And then he mocks him almost at the end with that line of 7 seconds till the end, time enough for you perhaps, but what will you do with it? The only thing I can think of is that there's gonna be a moment in Part 3 where Cloud has 7 seconds to make a life or planet-altering decision. Maybe Meteor is in fact going to hit the planet, and within those 7 seconds he has to figure out, do I help Sephiroth or do I try to find another way to stop Meteor? Which could tie back to that idea of Cloud and Sephiroth working together to destroy the Lifestream, because if the Meteor hits the planet but the Lifestream is gone, no one dies, right? And that's really what I think Sephiroth wants, and in that point in the story, Cloud might want that as well. If he's so delulu from seeing this weird version of Aerith, he might be manipulated into doing that. But I think that's what that 7 seconds is. Within Part 3, at some point, Cloud is going to have to make a really big decision, and he's only got 7 seconds to do it. And it could involve anything from Meteor to Aerith to the party to the Black Materia to maybe his own mental state. Maybe he's got 7 seconds to put his memory back together and accept that loss and death just happened. Either way, it's super intriguing, and we're probably going to get more clarification on that within the next few years through Ever Crisis. So maybe we'll get some little tidbits in regards to that phrase, 7 seconds in particular. With that being said, that is the video. Thank you guys for providing some really interesting thoughts and ideas on that comment thread. Again, apologies if I did not put yours in the video. Again, there's usually a lot of overlap and I don't want to repeat myself too much, but trust, I did see the comment, and I do appreciate you guys actually taking the time to leave your thoughts and comments on videos and actually watch them. It means a lot. So with that being said, That is the video. I am Curious Corduroy. Let me know in this video what you guys thought of what we discussed in today's community video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.